Like a surprising number of great British bands, Hawkwind were formed in 1969 and they're still going, though with an impressive list of 37 past members, which include Lemmy, who went on to be the linchpin for Motorhead, and Ginger Baker, who was part of the band Cream. There is one founder member who's still with them, who is Dave Brock, who is the central character of Hawkwind, and as far as I know, always has been. They are known for pioneering space rock and also doing hard rock and prog rock and psych rock and even been labelled as proto punk at times. And they have released an eye watering 36 albums. Hi, my name's Dan, and this was the third album by Hawkwind, and it's my first time listening to it. It's not my first experience of Hawkwind. I've got a couple of their albums, and I've reviewed at least one of those before in other circumstances. But this is the first one for my channel here, and there's only one more on this list that I'm working to. So I would kind of what I usually do is to try and give you an idea of what the music sounds like, and I usually start with the genre. I'm going to say space rock. I'm not sure that anybody would argue with that, and well, I guess anybody could argue with that if they felt like it. So it's soundscape based stuff, and it has some similarities with some krautrock. So a lot of things that have been labelled space rock, in fact, um, that I'm aware of, um, have their roots in krautrock, or in fact are krautrock. It's not the only sound that krautrock did, but there was quite a reasonable amount of space rock in there. Also, some Pink Floyd, not the very early Pink Floyd, but the kind of bit after that, they tended towards space rock, which are these big kind of continuums of sound. So it's got long passages that are on either a single chord or very simple chord sequences, and it's kind of got a drone trance-like approach to that, particularly with so it's got guitar, bass, and drums, and quite a bit of yeah, fairly heavy at times, and it often has that pushing forward feel from the drums that I associate with space rock. There's a particular drum pattern called the motor. I'm not sure I actually detected that exact pattern anywhere, but it's got that kind of feel like it could just roll on forever. So I've used the word continuum before. I'm going to use it again here. Continuum, drone, trance, but definitely rock because it's done with overdriven guitar and those kind of instruments. It's kind of musically or instrumentally, it's kind of rough around the edges and simple and quite thrashy. And probably some people at the time would have lumped it in with other stuff that they would have called heavy metal. So it does have some stuff in common with, for example, I'm just I'm losing it. Black Sabbath, but and other bands like that. But there's kind of roughness to it. Is probably why it's labelled proto punk, or that name has yeah that genre has been attached to it by some people. To my mind, it's kind of garagey in this. Maybe that is the same thing. Maybe garage is proto punk. It sounds kind of lo-fi, but what I'm talking about here is the kind of the basis of the guitar, bass, and drums that's going on here. Overlaid on top of this is synth sounds. And this is, it's 1972, so it's still quite early days for synths, but they're using them with kind of sweeping effects. They're not making really musical use of the synths, but using it as sound effects. And it's kind of spacey. It's got a sci-fi kind of feel to it. It's also kind of slightly psychedelic. It's got twitters, it's got sweeps, it's got white noise, and also occasionally there's use of a phaser on the drums, which is, to my mind, a sure sign that something's psychedelic if somebody does that. It's got echo effects as well. So the overall effect is a very kind of sci-fi feel, and this is, I believe, why this is called space rock. It's not just about the space they create as they make it, but it's got this feeling of science fiction to it. We've got Lemmy here on bass. This is his first album on bass. Lemmy is a well-known character from the British heavy rock music scene. He went on to be the linchpin of Motorhead. Um, but kind of accidental, apparently. So reading about this was very interesting. So he joined Hawkwind, um, and they were looking for they intended him to be a guitarist, but he thought for some reason that he was meant to be joining them as a bassist, and he didn't really know bass, but he did know guitar. So he played bass as if he was a guitarist. So he played wandering solo lines, like a rambling guitar solo. Not all of it is like that, but it does add an interesting dimension to the sound. And there's a great example of this in the track Lords of the Light. And there's this kind of, again, one of these space rock continuum bits, but the bass line is just kind of, is more of a solo, and it makes it quite interesting. Occasionally, there's more acoustic guitar stuff. I think there's a couple of tracks that use that. Um, so you get a kind of difference in tone and feel there. But the classic Hawkwind feel is of this thrash guitar with this sweeping sci-fi synth stuff going on. It's I find it interesting that it does have this kind of feel that says sci-fi, but it's also somehow lo-fi at the same time, which are flying completely different contexts there. Wikipedia gives the label progressive rock to it. I think I strongly disagree, at least for most of the tracks on here. Right, the singing. Let's talk about this. How on earth do I describe his singing? So there's not a lot of movement in melody. It's quite spacey and metallic. I think it's quite compressed in tone range in the recording. It's low in the mix, so it kind of sounds like it's a background thing almost. It's a bit like, I'm going to refer back to Black Sabbath again, or Ozzy's early stuff. And it's quite a high sound. Sometimes quite a strong southern UK accent comes through as he sings. So it's an interesting sound. Again, it gives it this slightly off kilter feel to it. The subject matter is mostly science fictiony, doomy kind of stuff. And the whole thing as a package it couldn't be anybody else but Hawkwind. This is a very distinctive sound, uh, but it is a sound that I quite like. I have to say, I don't think that this is the best Hawkwind album that I've heard. It may be a really good typical Hawkwind album, or certainly of this point in time in their career. I suspect it's a grower, in that over the two listens that I gave it, I did start to enjoy it more through those listens. So that's what I think of this album. And as always, I'd like to get your input. So please do tell me what you think of this album. If you got any memories of this album, if you got any, anything you want to say about Hawkwind, or the British music scene at the time. If you think I'm completely off when I'm comparing them to Black Sabbath, do tell me. Um, uh, Feedback. Hit me. Let's get a conversation going. That's it from me for now.
What do you think you can do now? You're very small from way out here.